The academy was not built for humans. Ethan Cross had known this from the first day he walked through the main gate. 3 years ago, 17 years old, carrying a bag that was too heavy and wearing a uniform that didn't quite fit. The corridors were wide enough to drive a transport through. The ceilings were tall enough that some of the larger species never had to duck. The air recyclers were set to a blend that served 17 different kinds of lungs, and humans were number 16 on that list. They were always near the bottom of someone's list out here. Kale Station hung in the empty space between 3-star systems, a neutral zone that belonged to no one and therefore belonged to everyone. From the outside it looked like a wheel, a slow-turning ring of gray metal and pale light half a kilometer across. The outer ring was zero gravity, used for combat drills and flight simulation. The inner ring had enough rotation to keep feet on the floor and food on the table. The middle ring was everything else: classrooms, barracks, mess halls. The long observation deck that ran the full circumference of the station, where you could walk for an hour in a straight line and end up exactly where you started, and watch the stars the whole time. Cadets went to the observation deck when they needed to remember why they were here. Ethan went there less than he used to. He already knew why he was here. He sat in the 3rd row of Advanced Tactical Theory, 2nd seat from the wall, same position he had taken every class for 2 years. His notebook was open. His pen had not moved in 20 minutes. Instructor Var Thune was at the front of the room, pacing the way he always paced. Slow, deliberate, 4 long arms folded behind his back, his bone-white skin catching the light of the holographic map that floated above the center of the room. Varthun was Solari. He had taught at Kale Station for 40 years. He had written 3 books on fleet engagement doctrine that were required reading in every military institution in the known systems. He was, by any measure, one of the finest tactical minds currently alive. He had also told Ethan, on the very first day of class, that humans were strategically adequate but biologically limited. Ethan had written that down. He kept it in the inside cover of every notebook he used. The forward push in Sector 9, Varthun said, gesturing at the map, represents a textbook case of overextension. The supply corridor is single thread. One interdiction point compromises the entire advance. Any cadet who has completed the 3rd-year logistics sequence should be able to identify where that point is. A hand went up near the front of the room. Velkath. It was always Velkath. He was Krath, broad and low, scaled in gray-green with wide flat hands and eyes that caught light like polished metal. He was the highest-ranked cadet in the class, had been since the first week of their shared year, and he moved through Kale Station with the kind of easy certainty that came from never once having been told he was near the bottom of any list. Junction 12, Velkath said, the only resupply depot within operational range of the forward line. Cut it off and the advance starves within 9 standard days. Correct. Vathan nodded once, the closest thing to enthusiasm he ever showed. Junction 12, a single point of failure that the Krath planners in this scenario overlooked. Velkath absorbed the mild rebuke without flinching. He didn't look embarrassed. He looked like he was filing the information away in some internal catalog that he would review later. Ethan watched him do it and felt a complicated thing that was not quite admiration and not quite dislike. Yara nudged him from the next seat over. "You're not writing anything," she said, barely moving her lips. "I have it," Ethan said. "You've been staring at the wall for 10 minutes. The wall has better ideas than Junction 12. She kicked his ankle. He picked up his pen and wrote, Junction 12, single thread, 9 days. Then he drew a small box around it and stared at the stars outside the classroom window instead. The mess hall at midday was loud the way a market was loud. Different kinds of noise stacked on top of each other, none of them quite matching. Solari ate in silence at their long tables along the east wall. Krath cadets ate in groups and argued about everything, loudly, as a form of social bonding. The Therian, small and winged, ate quickly and left immediately, which Ethan had always found sensible. Humans tended to cluster together. No rule required it. It had just evolved that way, the same way humans in unfamiliar places had always found each other and pulled chairs together. Dax was already at the table when Ethan and Yara arrived. Dax was always already at the table. He was from the farming settlements on Boris Foiv, which explained both his size. Large enough that the Krath cadets had initially tried to recruit him for their combat team before someone explained the species situation, and his complete inability to sit through the diplomacy module without disrupting it. He had failed that module 3 times. The Academy kept passing him on everything else because his combat scores were, according to the head of the Physical Training Division, statistically implausible. "Varthun give you the look?" Dax asked, not looking up from his food. "He gives me the look every day," Ethan said. "Which look specifically?" Yara asked, sitting down. "The one that says he isn't sure why I'm here," Ethan said. "He gives that look to most of us," Yara said. She wasn't bitter about it. She was never bitter about things like that. She had explained to Ethan once, early in their first year, that being underestimated was a resource if you knew how to use it. She had been 13 years old when her family's colony ship suffered a catastrophic navigation failure, and she had manually recalculated the return trajectory with a pad and a textbook. She had been doing something with underestimation ever since. Humans have been in the wider systems for 60 years, she said, pushing food around her tray. And we're still the new species. The ones who stumbled in loud and haven't quite settled. Most of them are still deciding what to make of us. We stumbled in very loud, Dax agreed. We did. Ethan looked across the mess hall at the craft tables. Velkath was eating with a group of his classmates, talking in low clicks and tones that the translator in Ethan's ear rendered as fragmented syllables. The Krath dialect was still only partially mapped. As Ethan watched, Velkath glanced up and met his eyes across the room. Neither of them looked away for a moment. Then Velkath turned back to his table, and Ethan picked up his fork. Weapons qualification in the afternoon, the outer ring, 1/3 gravity. The instructors liked the low gravity range for qualification exercises. They said it leveled the field, removed the raw physical advantages of the larger species, and forced everyone to rely on form and technique. What it actually did, Ethan had decided, was give humans a quiet edge. The Krath were built for gravity. The Therian were built for zero-G. Humans were built for adaptation, which meant 1/3 gravity was just a problem to solve, and humans were, as a species, very good at solving problems. He shot a 91. Velkath shot a 96. The scores went up on the board, and Velkath looked at Ethan's number, then at Ethan. Your stance is wrong, he said. It wasn't an insult. He said it the way he said most things, as an observation that he expected to be acknowledged. I know, Ethan said. It should not produce those results, and yet. Something moved behind Velkath's mirror eyes, a consideration. He looked at Ethan's feet, at his shoulder position, at the angle of his arms. Ethan could see him working through it, trying to find the logic in a form that had no logic, that had been built out of 3 years of trial and error and a refusal to shoot the way he'd been taught. I'll figure it out, Velkath said. Not a threat, a statement. I know you will, Ethan said. I'll have something else by then. Velkath left without answering. Dax appeared at Ethan's shoulder the way he always appeared, from a slightly wrong direction, as if he had been standing behind something. He's going to be up all night with that, Dax said. Good, Ethan said. He should see what it looks like when someone refuses to do things the right way. In the evening, there was a mandatory briefing. All cadets, main common room. Senior staff on the screens. Mandatory all cadets briefings happen 4 times a year, 2 scheduled, 2 not. This was not a scheduled one. The common room filled up fast. Ethan found a spot against the back wall. Yara beside him, Dax somewhere in the crowd near the front. The senior staff appeared on screen. 4 faces, 3 species, all wearing expressions that had been carefully arranged to say nothing at all. The briefing was short. A patrol vessel assigned to the outer boundary had lost contact 2 days ago. The Academy was being informed as a matter of standard protocol. An investigation was underway. All training schedules would continue without change. Cadets were reminded to avoid spreading unverified information through unofficial channels. The briefing ended. For 3 full seconds, the common room was silent. Then everyone started talking at once. Ethan did not. He stood against the wall and watched the room. Yara stood beside him and did the same. Up near the front, he could see Velkath, perfectly still in the middle of the noise, also watching. Their eyes met briefly across the room. The Krath cadet's expression had changed, slightly. The certainty was still there, the flat solidity of a person who had been top-ranked since his first week. But there was something else underneath it now. Something careful. Communications failure, Yara said very quietly. That's what they said, Ethan said. Patrol vessels don't go dark from communications failures. No, she was quiet for a moment. Around them, the noise of the common room churned. Speculation, questions, 3 cadets from the intelligence track already working through their pads. 2 Krath cadets in what sounded like a heated disagreement. Normal noise, just faster, higher pitched. There was a cadet on navigation track, Yara said, Petra, 2 years behind us. She told me relay traffic has been up for 3 days. Encrypted volume, she said, higher than normal. Ethan looked at her. She checked? She asked the communications crew directly. Yara almost smiled. She has that kind of face. Ethan thought about 3 days of increased encrypted traffic. He thought about the senior staff's carefully arranged expressions. He thought about the briefing that was exactly 2 minutes long and contained precisely no information. He thought about a patrol vessel that went dark near the outer boundary. The outer boundary, which bordered the dark that still didn't have a proper name on any chart, where the intercept reports talked about something moving. Something the intelligence briefings called non-treaty aligned and expanding, which was the careful, formal, meaningless way of saying, we don't know what it is and it does not care about our agreements. The Veld, That was the name passing through the unofficial channels. Nobody had confirmed it. Nobody had denied it either. The calm is ending, Ethan said. Yara looked at him. She pulled her arms across her chest, a small movement self-contained. She had a way of going very still when she was thinking. Like the processing happened somewhere deep and private, and the outside of her just waited. Maybe, she said. Or maybe it's a communications failure. You don't believe that? No, she said. I don't. On the screens, the Academy's daily schedule had replaced the senior staff tomorrow's timetable scrolling through in calm blue text. Advanced Tactical Theory, 0800. Weapons Qualification, 1100. Navigation Practical, 1400. Flight Simulation Block B, 1600. All of it normal, all of it scheduled, all of it pretending that nothing had shifted. Dax found them eventually, coming through the crowd with his tray still in his hand from dinner, which he had apparently brought with him to the briefing, and continued eating throughout. So, he said. So, Ethan said. Patrol vessel. Yes. Dax ate a bite of something and considered this. Think it's the thing from the outer boundary? Probably. Huh. He ate another bite. Well, we've been training for something. It was the most Dax had ever said about the future. Ethan looked at him and recognized, underneath the flat delivery, a kind of readiness that had nothing to do with certainty. It was the readiness of someone who had been waiting without knowing he was waiting, and who had just felt the shape of what he had been waiting for. We should sleep, Yara said. Both of you. Now while we still can. She was right. She was almost always right. Ethan went to bed. He lay in the dark of the barracks and listened to the low hum of the station turning. That constant low vibration that lived in the walls and the floors, and that you stopped noticing after the first week, but which never actually stopped. He thought about the outer dark, about something moving out there without a proper name. He thought about being 19 years old and trained for 3 years for a thing that might finally be arriving. He was not afraid. He examined that fact the way Velkath had examined his shooting stance, carefully looking for the logic in something that had no logic, and he decided, just before he fell asleep, that the absence of fear was probably not courage. It was probably just the particular human problem of not being able to imagine far enough ahead. He was asleep in 4 minutes. Outside, Kale Station turned in the dark. The stars held their positions. The outer boundary sat quiet at the edge of the map systems. The patrol vessel did not respond to any further signals. The calm held. For now. 3 days after the briefing, the Academy announced a full combat simulation exercise. This was not unusual on its own. Grand simulations happened twice a year. Large-scale tactical exercises that pulled all 3rd and 4th year cadets out of regular classes for a full standard week and threw them into a running scenario designed to test everything at once. Command decisions, resource management, combat response, cooperation under stress. What was unusual was the timing. The last grand simulation had been 4 months ago. The next scheduled one was not for another 3. 2 simulations in 7 months had not happened in the Academy's recorded history. Ethan heard about it at breakfast from Petra, the navigation cadet, who had somehow found out before the official announcement went out. He looked at Yara across the table. She was already reading the preliminary briefing documents on her pad. They moved it up, she said. I can see that, Ethan said. They're not calling it a drill, she said. The official language calls it an operational readiness assessment. Dax was eating. What's the difference? A drill teaches you something, Yara said. An assessment finds out if you already know it. Dax processed this. So they want to know what we've got. They want to know what we've all got, Ethan said, before something requires them to know. Nobody said anything else about it. They ate their breakfast and the morning went on, and at 0900, the official announcement came through on every screen in the station. All 3rd and 4th year cadets. Main simulation bay, 1300 hours. Standard gear loadout. No prior briefing on scenario parameters. That last part was new. Normally, there was at least a framework given in advance. Velkath passed Ethan in the corridor after the announcement. He did not slow down. He glanced sideways as he passed. Good luck, he said. It was the first time he had ever said that. The main simulation bay was the largest enclosed space on Kale Station. In the outer ring, low gravity, 100 meters across, with a ceiling that went up 30 meters and a floor that could be reconfigured with temporary structures, barriers, elevated platforms, corridors, and dead ends. A different layout for every exercise. The bay smelled like ozone and recycled air and the faint metallic tang of the simulation rigs, which delivered haptic feedback through the gloves and boots of the training suits. Nothing in there could actually hurt you. The instructors were very clear about that. They said it every time. Ethan had never fully believed them. Commander Soren ran the pre-exercise briefing from the elevated platform at the north end of the bay. She was human, which still drew second glances from some of the newer cadets. A human in a command position was not unheard of. But at Kale Station, with its Solari administrative tradition, It remained unusual enough to register. She was 43 years old, had spent 12 years in active fleet service before transferring to the academy, and had a way of standing still that made you feel like she was moving toward you. Teams are pre-assigned, she says. You will find your assignment on the board behind me. You have 30 minutes before the scenario begins. You will not be told the scenario parameters in advance. You will receive them when the simulation starts. Silence about that. Good. She stepped back. Find your teams. The board showed 8 teams of 12, color-coded. Ethan found his name in the blue team column. Yara was there, Dax was there, 3 other human cadets he knew by face, less well by name. 4 Krath cadets' names he had to read twice. 1 Therian cadet named S, who was in the flight track and who Ethan had never spoken to but had watched once in the low-gravity drills and been quietly impressed. Velkath was not on blue team. He was red team, the top column, 6 Krath cadets. 4 Solari, 2 humans from the advanced combat track who Ethan knew were both excellent. Ethan looked at that list for a long moment. They separated the top cadets across teams. Yara said from beside him, yes, to test the other teams without them, she said. To see what we do when we're not operating in the shadow of the best. Or to see if we can beat them, Dax said. We're not on the same team, Ethan said. We can't beat them. We just have to. Outlast them. That was a different thing entirely. The scenario when it began was simple in its statement and brutal in its execution. 8 teams. 1 shared objective. A data core located at the center of the bay. First team to extract the core and bring it to their designated extraction point wins. All other teams are opposition. There are no alliances in the parameters. There is no rule against them. 30 seconds of silence after the announcement, while 60-some cadets processed what they had just been told. Then the bay lighting went red and the simulation went live. Ethan did not move. Yara, beside him, did not move either. Everyone is going to run toward the center, she said. Yes, he said. Which means the center becomes a fight with 7 teams. Yes. Which means anyone who wins the center fight has already spent most of what they have. Yes. Dax cracked his knuckles, which sounded in the silence like someone stepping on dry wood. So we wait. We wait, Ethan said, and we talk to our team. He turned around to face the remaining 9 cadets behind him. The 4 Krath looked at him with a particular expression that Krath cadets used for human authority. Not hostile, not respectful, just waiting to see if he would say something worth listening to. I know what you're thinking, Ethan said. You're thinking the fastest team gets the core. One of the Krath, a 3rd year named Var Hess, crossed his arms. That is generally how acquisition scenarios work. Yes, Ethan said, so let the other 6 teams go get it. Silence. We hold our position for 8 minutes, Ethan said. Let them hit each other. Let the numbers thin. Then we move, not to the center, but to the extraction points. We don't need to carry the core all the way across the bay. We need to control the path between the core and the nearest extraction point. Whoever takes the core from the center fight will be exhausted and down in numbers. We hit them at the point of maximum vulnerability. Varhes stared at him. That is not how you win this scenario. It's exactly how we win it, Yara said from beside Ethan. Her voice was quiet and flat and completely certain. Unless you'd like to run in with the other 6 teams and see how that goes. Another silence. Fine, said Varhes. 8 minutes. They heard the center fight before they saw it. The simulation rigs delivered sound as well as haptic feedback. And the sound from the middle of the bay was considerable. Shouted commands in 4 languages. The sharp crack of the training weapons registering hits. The particular grunt and thump of close-quarters engagement. Ethan counted. At 6 minutes, the noise dropped sharply. 3 teams already eliminated or scattered. At 7 minutes, a team came sprinting out of the center smoke. Red team, Velkath at the front, the data core in the hands of a Krath cadet named Vardesh, who was one of the better physical cadets in the year. They were down 4 members. Moving fast but moving tired. At 7 minutes and 40 seconds, blue team moved. They did not run. Ethan had them walking, fast controlled, covering angles. The Therian Cadet S flying low and fast along the ceiling, where she had a sight line that no one else did. Yara had the team positions mapped on a handheld relay display. Dax was at the front. Red team saw them at the same moment Velkath realized what had happened. The Krath leader's mirror eyes found Ethan across 30 meters of simulated battlefield, and in that moment Ethan saw it, the recognition. Not surprise. Something more precise than surprise. The recalibration of someone who had been operating on an assumption and just found out the assumption was wrong. The fight was short and ugly. Dax hit the line first, and the line held for a full 12 seconds before it started to give, which was 12 seconds longer than it should have based on numbers alone. Yara and S came around the left. Ethan and Varhes came around the right. Velkath fought the way. Velkath always fought. Precise, economical, no wasted movement. And he was still fighting when his last teammate went down and the simulation marked him as the final standing member of a eliminated team. He looked at Ethan. Blue team extracted the core 11 minutes later. The debrief afterward was mandatory, and the bay was quiet with the particular quiet of people processing something they had not expected. Commander Soren ran through the results team by team. She was not effusive. She noted what worked and what failed. She described Blue Team's strategy as unconventional resource management and did not editorialize beyond that. After the debrief, cadets dispersed slowly, in smaller groups than usual. Velkath fell into step beside Ethan in the corridor back toward the barracks block. He did not say anything for the length of a full corridor. "You waited," he said finally. "Yes," Ethan said. "You let the scenario play out before you committed resources." "Yes." Another corridor length of silence. "That is not standard doctrine," Velkath said. "No. It is not in any of the strategy texts." "No. Then where does it come from?" Ethan thought about it. He thought about humanity's 60 years in the wider systems. He thought about the centuries before that. The long human history of arriving in places with less than everyone else and figuring out how to make it work anyway. The history of people who had to wait because they couldn't afford to go first. "Experience," he said. Velkath absorbed this. He walked another corridor in silence. "The wrong stance," he said. "Yes," Ethan said. "The one that should not work. That one." They had reached the junction between the barracks corridors. Krath blocked to the left, human blocked to the right. Velkath stopped at the junction. "I have been at this academy for 4 years," he said. "I have been first rank since the first week of my first year. I've studied every strategy text on the approved list and several that are not. I have never once been eliminated in a simulation by a team I had already identified as lower ranked." Ethan waited. "I was operating on an assumption," Kit said. "We know," Ethan said. Velkath looked at him. Something in those mirror eyes was different than it had been in the mess hall 3 days ago. Not less certain. Velkath was not capable of being less certain. It seemed to be a built-in feature, but certain about different things. "You are more dangerous than you appear," Velkath said. "All of us are," Ethan said. Not as a threat, as a statement of fact delivered simply, the way Velkath himself said most things. The Krath cadet held his gaze for one more moment. Then he turned and walked toward the Krath block. Dax appeared from around a corner, where he had apparently been standing close enough to hear all of it. "Did you just make a friend?" he asked. "I have no idea what I just made," Ethan said. They walked back toward the barracks. Behind them, somewhere in the station's outer ring, the simulation bay was being reconfigured again. Different layout, different parameters. The staff working through the night to be ready for something. Getting ready. The way the whole station, Ethan now realized, was quietly getting ready. He just wasn't sure for exactly what. The second patrol vessel went dark on a Tuesday. Nobody announced it. There was no briefing this time. No senior staff on the screens. No careful language about communications failures pending investigation. The information moved the way information at Kale Station always moved when the administration decided not to share it. Through the maintenance crews. Through the communications team. Through Petra, who had that kind of face. And then through everyone else in the span of about 4 hours. 2 vessels, same boundary sector, 9 days apart. Ethan heard it at dinner and did not finish his food. He went to the observation deck instead. It was 1900 hours and the deck was mostly empty. Just a few first-year cadets he didn't know sitting near the far end, and a Solari instructor walking slowly with his hands behind his back, looking at nothing in particular. Ethan found a spot at the railing and stood there and looked out. The view from the observation deck never changed and never got old. Space did not have weather. It did not have moods. It sat in its own permanent dark and held its stars in exactly the positions they had always been in, indifferent to the small metal ring turning slowly inside it. Ethan had grown up on a station, not as large as Cahale but the same basic logic. Sealed walls, recycled air, the hum of systems running, and the view from any observation window had always felt to him less like looking out and more like being reminded. The universe is very large. You are very small. Keep that in mind. He found it comforting usually. Tonight it felt different. "You ate half your dinner," Yara said from beside him. He had not heard her come. He never did. "I wasn't hungry," he said. "You're always hungry." "Second one's gone dark," he said. "I know." She put her hands on the railing. Same sector. Same sector. 9 days. She was quiet. Below them, through the inner ring's transparent low floor panels, you could see the academy's lower corridors. Tiny moving figures, cadets and staff. The whole small contained world of Kale Station going about its evening. It looked very normal. It looked exactly the way it had looked every evening for 3 years. "My brother is on the Varant," Yara said. Ethan looked at her. "Survey vessel," she said. "Outer systems. He signed on 8 months ago." She was looking at the stars. Her hands were flat on the railing, not gripping it. "He sends messages when the relay window is open. Last one was 12 days ago." The relay windows are irregular out there, Ethan said carefully. Yes, she said, they are. He did not say anything else. She did not want comfort right now. She wanted to say it out loud, say it into the air, which was a different thing from wanting comfort. He understood that. He stood beside her and let the silence do what silence was for. After a while, she straightened up. What do you know about the Veld? She asked. Only what's in the intercept briefings, he said. Which isn't much. Tell me what isn't much. Ethan leaned on the railing. First contact record goes back 14 years. Solari survey team, outer boundary, sector not currently mapped. They sent back a partial report before the signal cut out. 3 fragments. First one described ships, described them as large, dark, no running lights, no signal output. Second fragment described an engagement attempt. Third fragment was just noise. He paused. That was the last Solari survey pushed to that sector. Yara absorbed this. And in 14 years, 12 separate vessels from 4 different species have gone dark in boundary sectors that border the same general region. Not all in one burst. Spread out, irregular spacing. The intelligence teams argued for years about whether it was connected. And now 2 of ours have gone dark 9 days apart and they're not arguing anymore. She nodded slowly. She had probably already known most of this. She had asked to hear him say it out loud, which told him she was working through something. They're testing the boundary, she said. That's what it looks like. And we're sitting here doing weapons qualification and tactical theory. We're sitting here getting assessed, Ethan said. There's a difference. She looked at him. They moved up the simulation, he said. They changed the language. They've had the communications crew on double shifts. They're not doing nothing, Yara. They're doing it quietly, which is its own kind of information. She thought about this. They don't want panic. They want to know what we have first. She turned back to the stars. Somewhere out there, past the edge of the mapped systems, past the last survey markers and the relay beacons and all the small signs that said people have been here, the dark just went on, nameless, uncharted, and something in it was moving. My brother's fine, she said, not to Ethan, to herself. Yes, Ethan said. She nodded once. I'm going to bed. She left the way she arrived, without sound. Ethan stayed at the railing a little longer. The name came up 2 days later, in a conversation he wasn't supposed to hear. He was in the equipment storage room off the main training corridor, replacing a worn strap on his simulation harness, when 2 instructors stopped in the corridor outside. He recognized the voices Varthun and a Solari tactical officer named Sen who ran the advanced flight track. They were speaking in standard, which the Solari instructors only did in mixed company, or when they didn't expect to be overheard. Ethan went still. Can't keep the cadets in the dark indefinitely, Sen said. The second loss will be confirmed by the end of the week. There's nothing to manage after that. The council has not made an official determination, Varthun said. The council is taking their time because once they make it official, the response protocols activate. A pause. And the response protocols include authorization for the Black Ship program. Ethan's hand stopped moving on the harness strap. That has not been confirmed operational, Varthun said. It was confirmed operational 7 months ago, Sen said. I was at the briefing. You were at the briefing. His voice was flat. They've been running her dark and quiet since then, which is not the same as not operational. When the authorization comes, she goes. And if she goes, then the Veld will know exactly what kind of species they've been testing. The footsteps moved away down the corridor. The voices faded. Ethan sat in the equipment room for a long moment. He finished fixing the harness strap. He folded it carefully and put it back on the rack. Then he went and found Dax, who was in the common room. And he sat down beside him and he said very quietly, "Have you heard of something called the Black Ship?" Dax looked at him sideways. "Where'd you hear that?" "Have you heard of it?" Dax leaned back. He was quiet for an unusual amount of time, which meant he was deciding something. "My cousin," he said finally. "She's in the fleet. Engineering track. She mentioned it once, about a year ago. Said been reassigned to something she couldn't talk about. Something big. Said the construction team called it the Black Ship because it had no running light, because a transponder signal, no registry markings, no record anywhere. It didn't officially exist." He looked at Ethan. She seemed proud and scared at the same time. "What is it?" She couldn't say or wouldn't. Dax rubbed the back of his neck. She said, and this is the one thing she told me. She said if you ever saw it coming, you'd know why they built it without a name. Ethan thought about the Solari survey team's first contact record. Large, dark, no running lights, no signal output. He thought about the kind of species that looked at something like that and decided to build one back. "We made something that looks like theirs," he said. "Sounds that way," Dax said, "to show them we could." Dax picked up his mug and drank from it. "Humans," he said, "not without affection." That evening, Commander Soren announced a change to the training schedule. Starting the following week, Third and fourth year cadets would add 2 additional hours of daily simulation time. The new sessions would focus on multi-environment engagement, vacuum operation, compromised gravity, close quarters, and reduced visibility. The announcement used the phrase expanded operational readiness and was delivered in the same calm tone as every other administrative update. In the common room, Ethan watched cadets react. Some looked tense, some looked focused. A first year near the door looked afraid, which was honest of him. Velkath was sitting at a table with 2 other Krath cadets, reading the announcement on his pad. He read it twice, Ethan noticed. Then he set the pad down and looked at the ceiling for a moment, very still. Ethan crossed the room and sat down across from him. This had not happened before. Velkath looked at him with an expression that was difficult to read. Vacuum operation, Ethan said. You're good at that. Yes, Velkath said. Multi-environment close quarters, reduced visibility. You're good at that too. Yes, Velkath said more carefully. I'm not, Ethan said. I'm not bad. But I'm not good the way you are. He said it plainly because it was true, and because there was no useful reason to pretend otherwise. Dax is good at close quarters, but he loses something in 0G. Yara is better in vacuum than either of us, but reduced visibility is a problem for her processing speed. Velkath watched him across the table. You are telling me your weaknesses. I'm telling you things you've probably already observed, Ethan said. I'm also telling you that you lost a simulation to a team I was running, so we both have gaps. A pause. What are you proposing? Velkath asked. Cross-training, Ethan said. You help me with vacuum technique. I show you what I was doing with a simulation strategy. We both go into whatever is coming with fewer gaps. Velkath was quiet for a long moment. The common room moved around them. Somewhere near the back, someone had turned on a news relay. The outer boundary situation was appearing in civilian channels now, carefully worded. Nothing confirmed, everything implied. You believe something is coming, Velkath said. 2 patrol vessels, Ethan said. 9 days apart, same sector. Yes, they moved up the simulation. They're expanding training hours. The relay traffic has been high for 2 weeks. Yes, Velkath said again. He looked down at his pad, then back up. The Krath outer settlements are in the same general boundary region. His voice did not change when he said this. It stayed flat and measured and exact, the way his voice always was. But something underneath it had weight. I have family in those settlements. Ethan looked at him. Velkath met his eyes. So I already know something is coming, he said. I have known for longer than you have. I simply did not mention it because it was not useful information in context. A beat, cross-training, he said. Agreed. He held out his hand in the human way, which he clearly did not normally do, executed with a slight awkwardness that said he had looked it up at some point. Ethan took it and shook it. Dax, appearing from his slightly wrong direction behind Ethan's shoulder, looked down at the handshake with an expression of genuine surprise. Did you just make a don't? Ethan said. Friend? I said don't. Velkath released the handshake and returned to his pad, and if there was something in the angle of his head that was just slightly less closed than before, none of them pointed it out. Some things were more useful left unacknowledged. The news relay on the back wall murmured about the boundary, about communication losses, about council deliberations in progress, about a situation that was still described, in all the careful official language, as under investigation. Ethan looked at the stars through the common room window. Same stars, same dark, same positions they had always been in. Something was out there in it, and somewhere out there in it, dark and quiet, and without a name on any registry, something human was already moving toward it. The calm held, for now. The cross-training started on a Wednesday, and by Friday, Ethan had a bruised shoulder, a new understanding of vacuum movement geometry, and a slowly growing suspicion that Velkath had been going easy on everyone else his entire time at the academy. The Krath cadet did not teach the way the instructors taught. He did not explain things in sequence, building from principle to application. He demonstrated once, fast and exact, and then expected you to do it. If you failed, he demonstrated again, slightly slower, and watched you with those mirror eyes until you found the part where your body disagreed with physics and fixed it. It was unpleasant, and it worked. You're dropping your left side when you push off a surface in low gravity, Velkath said. In the outer ring on the second day, watching Ethan cross 30 meters of near-zero space toward a training post. Your right side arrives first. In vacuum combat, that is a half-second window that a trained opponent will use. I know, Ethan said. Then fix it. I'm trying. Trying and fixing are different things. Yara, watching from the observation rail, said nothing. She had the particular expression she wore when she thought something was funny, but had decided not to say so. Ethan pushed off again. He concentrated on the left side. He arrived at the training post with both sides at roughly the same moment and grabbed the post and looked back at Velkath. Velkath tilted his head a fraction. That was as much approval as he gave. By the following Monday, Ethan's time across the standard vacuum course had dropped by 4 seconds. Velkath had, in exchange, spent 3 sessions working through the simulation strategy with Ethan, the patient's mechanics, the resource calculation, the particular human habit of letting a situation develop before committing. He had absorbed it the way he absorbed everything, with complete focused attention and no visible emotional response. And then on the 4th session, he had run the simulation 3 times and won all 3, using variations on the strategy that had not occurred to Ethan. "You're faster than I am at this," Ethan had said after the 3rd win. "You invented it," Velkath had said. "I am only using it correctly." Ethan had not known what to do with that, so he had written it in his notebook. The incident happened on a Thursday 17 days after the 2nd patrol vessel went dark. It was 0340 in the station's night cycle. Ethan was asleep. The barracks were quiet, the particular deep quiet of a place where everyone around you is also unconscious. That low collective stillness that you only notice when it stops. It stopped. The alarm was not the standard drill tone. Every cadet at KL Station knew the drill tone. 3 short pulses repeated, the sound of a scheduled inconvenience. This was different. 1 long tone, continuous, rising slightly in pitch. Ethan had heard it exactly once before, in orientation week, when the instructor had played it on a recording and said, "This means the station itself is the emergency. This means you move now and you ask questions after." He was on his feet before the tone finished its first second. The barracks lights came up red. Around him, 8 other cadets were doing what he was doing. Moving without full consciousness, boots going on. Emergency kit grabbed from the shelf above the bunk. Bodies already halfway to the door before the brain fully caught up. Ethan was in the corridor in 30 seconds. The corridor was already filling, red lighting, the low alarm continuing its single climbing note. Cadets from the adjacent blocks coming out of doorways, some of them still pulling on jackets. He found Yara at the junction between corridors, already oriented, already looking in the right direction. "Outer ring," she said. "What happened?" "I don't know. The alert pattern matches a hull integrity event." Dax appeared. He was fully dressed, which meant either he had been awake already or he slept dressed, which was, on reflection, possible. "Hull event?" Dax said. "That's what the pattern suggests," Yara said. "Something hit us," Dax said, not a question. The corridor intercom crackled. Commander Soren's voice came through, steady and without hurry, which was its own kind of signal. A calm voice in an emergency meant the person using it was working very hard to keep things from getting worse. "All cadets, report to emergency stations by block assignment. Outer ring is under restricted access. Damage control teams, report to Junction 7. This is not a drill. This is not a drill." Ethan had heard that phrase in training contexts 100 times. Instructors used it for emphasis. Cadets used it, ironically. Hearing it come through the intercom in a red-lit corridor at 0340 with the alarm still running made it mean something entirely different. "Emergency station," he said. "Come on." Blue Block's emergency station was a reinforced room off the inner ring's main corridor, designed to hold 60 cadets in magnetic seats with full harness locks in case of gravity failure. When Ethan arrived, it was already half full. He found his seat, locked in, looked around. Velkath was across the room, already locked in. He caught Ethan's eye and held it for a moment. His expression said, "I know as much as you do, which is nothing which I do not like." Ethan nodded. The next 40 minutes were the most difficult kind of waiting, the kind where your body had prepared for action, and the action had not arrived, and the alarm was still running, and the lights were still red, and the intercom gave 2 more brief updates that contained exactly no new information. Ethan counted cadets, 61 in the room, 2 missing from his block. He checked the sheet on the wall, both from the outer ring barracks. His stomach did something. Then Commander Soren's voice came back. "All cadets, stand by. The situation is contained. We are going to brief you in full. Remain in emergency stations." The alarm stopped. The silence after it was enormous. The brief came 20 minutes later. Soren walked into the emergency station herself rather than using the intercom, which told Ethan immediately that what she had to say was not something she wanted traveling through the station's sound system. She stood at the front of the room, and she looked at them, and she did not soften it. At 0320 this morning, a Veld probe entered the outer boundary of KL Station's proximity zone. It was identified by the long-range sensor array at 0318. It made 1 pass at the outer ring sensor cluster and impacted the outer hull at Junction 9 at 0327. 2 members of the night shift maintenance crew sustained injuries. Both are in the medical bay. Both are expected to recover. The room was very still. The probe was approximately 1 meter across. It was not a weapon in the conventional sense. It was a mapping device. It was transmitting on a tight band signal during its approach, cataloging the station's exterior. "We destroyed it on impact. The signal it sent before impact has been captured and analyzed. It was transmitting our exact position, our hull layout, and our sensor array configuration. She let that sit for a moment. The Veld now know where we are and what our exterior looks like. This was intentional. This was a message. She paused. The Galactic Council has been notified. A formal response determination is expected within 72 hours. Ethan stared at the floor, a mapping probe, 1 meter across. It had flown to them, cataloged them, and sent the information home before dying against their hull. It had not tried to hurt them. It had just looked at them, carefully and completely, and told someone else everything it found. That was patient. That was deliberate. That was the behavior of something that was not in a hurry because it did not need to be. Are there questions? Soren asked. A Therian cadet near the back said, very quietly. The 2 crew members who were hurt, what were their names? Soren looked at her. Cadet 10 and Specialist Var-Ul, both will recover. That matters, she said it without decoration, just, that matters. Any other questions? Velkath raised his hand. The probe's approach vector. Was it from the boundary sector where the patrol vessels were lost? Yes, Soren said. Velkath lowered his hand. After the emergency stations released, most cadets went back to the barracks. It was 0500, and there were 2.5 hours until the first class of the day, and no one was going to sleep, but the instinct was to return to a known space and be there. Ethan did not go back. He walked to the observation deck. The outer ring was still restricted, a team of maintenance staff moving along the hull in suits, but from the observation deck you could see the patch of the outer wall near Junction 9, where the impact had left a blackened mark the size of a transport vehicle. Clean edges. Precise. It had not wanted to do more damage than it did. It had wanted to look. He stood at the railing and looked at the mark and thought about the particular horror of being studied. Dax came and stood beside him. Then Yara. Then, after a while, Velkath, who came alone from the direction of the Krath block and stood on Ethan's other side without a word. The 4 of them stood at the railing and looked at the burn mark on the outer hull. It wasn't trying to destroy us, Ethan said. No, Velkath said. It was finding out if it could. Nobody answered that. Yara had her hands flat on the railing again. Ethan glanced at her. Her face was composed. She was doing the thing where she went still and processed somewhere deep in private. He did not push. My people have a word, Velkath said after a while. He said it in Krath first, a short dry sound, and then translated. It means roughly, the moment before a hunt begins when the hunter shows themselves on purpose, to see how the prey reacts. Ethan looked at him. It is considered the most dangerous moment, Velkath said. Not because you are in immediate danger. Because the hunter is learning something about you that you cannot prevent them from learning. How you stand when you are afraid, which direction you move, whether you scatter or hold. Silence. Did we hold? Dax asked. Ethan looked around the deck. The maintenance crew on the hull, working in the dark with calm efficiency, fixing the mark. The emergency station that had filled in under 3 minutes. Soren's voice, steady, in a red-lit corridor at 0340. Velkath raising his hand in a briefing to ask the exact right tactical question. 2 crew members in the medical bay expected to recover, and a cadet who had asked their names. We held, Ethan said. Velkath looked at the burn mark. Good, he said. Then the hunter learned the wrong thing. They stood there until the maintenance crew finished and the outer ring restriction lifted, and the station's lights began cycling toward morning. The stars did not change, they never did, but the burn mark on the hull was new, and it was going to be there for a while, and every cadet who walked past Junction 9 for the next week was going to see it and understand something they had not understood before. The Veld had looked at them, and Kale Station had stood perfectly still and let itself be seen, and its lights had stayed on, and its crew had gone to work in the dark, and its cadets had locked into their emergency seats without panic, and when the alarm stopped, it had been because the situation was contained, not because they were afraid. At 0730, first class of the day began, Advanced Tactical Theory. Var Thun at the front of the room, 4 arms folded behind his back, the holographic map rotating above the center of the room. He did not acknowledge the events of the night before. He looked at the class, and his gaze moved across them, and when it reached Ethan it stayed there for just a moment longer than it usually did. Then he began to teach, and for the first time in 3 years, Ethan noticed that the look Var Thun gave him was not the one from the inside cover of his notebook. It was a different look entirely. He was not sure what to do with that yet. He picked up his pen and wrote. The Council's formal response determination came in 51 hours, not 72, 51. Ethan was in the middle of a vacuum drill when the announcement went station-wide. Soren's voice, cutting through the calm in every room and corridor and training bay, simultaneously, calmed the way deep water is calm. Not still, just very deep, and very cold, and nothing you could see the bottom of. All cadets and staff. The Galactic Council has issued a formal determination regarding Veld activity in boundary sectors 4 through 9. The determination classifies current Veld actions as coordinated territorial aggression. A state of active conflict has been formally recognized. Kale Station is now operating under wartime protocol. All training shifts will be suspended at 1800 hours today and replaced with operational readiness preparation. A full station briefing will follow at 2000 hours. That is all. The drill stopped. In the outer ring, 30 cadets in training suits floated in near-zero gravity and said nothing. The silence had a different quality than the silence after the probe impact. That had been shock, the particular breathlessness of something unexpected. This was different. This was the silence of something expected, prepared for, studied from a distance for weeks, finally arriving. The silence of a door opening that you knew was going to open. Ethan looked across the training space at Velkath, who was 8 meters away and also still, suit helmet under his arm, mirror eyes fixed on the middle distance. The Krath cadet's jaw was set. He was thinking about his family in the outer settlements. Ethan knew. The same way Ethan was thinking about Yara's brother, on the Varant survey vessel. The same way Dax was probably thinking about his cousin, in the Fleet Engineering Division, the one who had been reassigned to something big that she couldn't talk about. The Therian cadet, drifted slowly down from the ceiling where she had been running the Highline approach drill. She landed without sound, and stood very straight and looked at Ethan, because she had learned in the past 3 weeks of cross-training that when things were unclear, looking at Ethan was a reasonable starting position. He did not have anything to say yet. He pushed off the wall and floated toward the exit hatch. "Drill's over," he said. "Let's go." The station felt different by afternoon. It was not louder. It was not more frantic. If anything, it was quieter than normal. The kind of quiet that happens when people stop making the small, unnecessary noises that fill ordinary time. The conversations about nothing. The laughter in corridors. The sounds of people at ease. All of that was still there, but underneath it was a new layer of quiet. A stillness that had moved in and was taking up space. Ethan sat in the mess hall with Yara and Dax and ate his lunch without tasting it. Yara had her pad on the table but was not reading it. She was looking at the far wall with the expression that meant she was far away. "Have you heard from your brother?" Ethan asked. "Not yet," she said. "The relay windows are." "I know," she said. "I know they're irregular." A pause. "I know." He let it go. Dax was eating at normal pace, which said either he was very calm or he had decided to be practical about the things he could control, which for Dax had always meant eating when food was available. He had grown up on Borea Zafoy, where supply ships ran on unpredictable schedules, and you learned early to eat what was in front of you, because you did not know what was coming. "My cousin," Dax said without looking up from his tray. Ethan looked at him. "She's been dark for 3 weeks," Dax said. "No messages. The Fleet Engineering channel she used to post in just stopped." He ate another bite. "I think she's already out there." "On the black ship?" Ethan said quietly. "I think so." Yara looked up from the far wall. Her eyes moved to Dax. Something passed across her face, the particular expression of someone recalculating how close the abstract already is. "Then it's already moving," she said. "Been moving," Dax said. 7 months, Sen said. "Operating dark." He set down his fork. "She'll be fine. She's the most capable person I've ever known. She makes me look clumsy." He said it completely seriously. The idea of Dax looking clumsy next to someone was difficult to imagine. Nobody addressed it. The 2000 hours briefing was held in the main assembly hall, which fit the entire station population. Staff, cadets, maintenance crews, administrative personnel, all of them together in one room for the first time in the 3 years Ethan had been at Kale Station. The room was designed for it. Tiered seating rising from a central floor where the senior staff stood. Commander Soren stood at the center. She looked the same as she always looked. Same posture. Same stillness, but she had changed into her full dress uniform, the one with the service stripes on the sleeve, which she never normally wore, and the effect of it was not ceremonial. It was a statement. She was telling them, with the choice of what she was wearing, that this was real, and she was treating it as real, and they should too. "I am going to be direct with you," she said, "because you have earned that, and because there is no longer any purpose in careful language." The hall was absolutely silent. "The Veld have been testing our boundaries for 14 years. We have lost 14 vessels across 4 species. We have lost 2 of our own in the past 3 weeks. The probe that struck our hull 4 days ago was the final element of what our intelligence teams now believe was a systematic assessment of this station and its capabilities. They now know our position, our sensor layout, our hull configuration, and our response time." She paused. "They have decided we are worth engaging." A sound moved through the hall. Not panic. Something lower than panic. A collective intake. "I am also going to tell you what they do not know," Soren said. Her voice did not rise. It got quieter, which pulled the room toward her. "They do not know what we have spent the last 7 months building. They do not know that we watched them watch us, and we were not idle. They do not know the name of what is coming toward them right now from the dark side of the outer boundary. Because what is coming has no name. It has no transponder. It has no running lights. It has no record in any registry in any system. She looked at the room. It does not officially exist. The silence now was different. It was the silence of understanding arriving. Ethan looked around the hall. Solari faces, Krath faces, Therian cadets in their back row cluster, and he watched the information land differently on each one. The Solari, with their 40-year tactical tradition, going still and calculating. The Krath, reading between the lines, scales shifting in the particular way that meant something between appreciation and unease. Velkath, 2 rows below Ethan, had his eyes on Soren. His hands were very still on his knees. Humanity's contribution to this response, Soren continued, is one vessel, one. We did not build a fleet. We did not build a formation. We built one thing, and we built it to be the answer to every question the Veld asked when they looked at us. A beat. We are a young species out here. 60 years. We are still number 16 on most people's lists. But we have a very old habit of responding to threats in ways that are difficult to predict, difficult to understand, and very difficult to survive. She let that sentence stand on its own. Effective ZO600 tomorrow, Kale Station moves to full wartime operations. All 4th-year cadets will receive accelerated completion assessment starting at 0800. Those who pass will receive field commissions within 48 hours. You will be assigned to active fleet positions. She looked at the 4th-year section of the hall. All of you have been training for something. That something has arrived. I am not going to tell you. I am not asking a great deal of you. I am going to tell you that you are ready. Because I have watched you every day for years and I know that you are. She was quiet for a moment. Get some sleep, she said. ZO600 comes early. She stepped back. The briefing was over. Nobody went to sleep. The common room filled. The observation deck filled. The corridors filled with small groups standing close and talking in low voices. The kind of conversations that people have when they are burning through the last hours of something and they know it, and they want the burning to be intentional. Ethan went to the observation deck. He stood at the railing and looked out and thought about the morning, the assessment, the commission, the fleet assignment, the thing that waited on the other side of all of it. He was 19 years old. He had wanted this in the abstract way you want things that feel large and distant. Now it was not abstract. Now it was 0600, which was 8 hours away. Velkath came and stood beside him. He did not say anything for a long time. They stood at the railing together the way Ethan and Yara had stood 3 weeks ago, before the probe, before the second vessel, before all of it, when the calm was still mostly intact. My family is in Settlement 3, Velkath said, Outer Cluster, Boundary Sector 6. Ethan listened. My father runs a mineral survey operation. My mother teaches at the settlement school. I have 2 younger sisters. He said it plainly. They have been told to shelter in place pending resolution of the boundary situation. They do not know yet that the boundary situation now has an official name. I'm sorry, Ethan said. Do not be sorry, Velkath said. Not harshly. He meant it practically. Be effective. Ethan nodded. Velkath looked out at the stars. I have spent 4 years at this academy, he said. And I believed, for most of those years, that I understood the full range of what I was dealing with. Every species, every capability, every documented approach to conflict and strategy and response. He paused. I had categorized humanity as a footnote. New noisy, adequate. Interesting in small ways but not significant in large ones. He was quiet for a moment. I was wrong, he said. Ethan said nothing. You build things that do not officially exist, Velkath said. You wait when everything says run. You use a wrong stance and make it work. You share your weaknesses openly and turn that into an advantage. You lose your first 40 years in the wider systems getting things wrong, and then you spend the next 20 getting very, very quiet. He looked at Ethan. The Veld looked at this station and saw number 16 on a list. They saw the new species, the ones still finding their place. Yes, Ethan said. They made the same mistake I made, Velkath said. The words sat between them, the observation deck railing cold under Ethan's hands, the stars outside completely unchanged. Everything else was changing. The stars did not care. When this is over, Velkath said, I would like to continue working together. Yes, Ethan said. Same. Dax materialized from his wrong direction and leaned on the railing on Ethan's other side. He had a mug of something hot and he was looking at the stars. You two having a moment, he asked. We finished, Ethan said. Good. Dax drank from the mug. Because Yara got a message from her brother 20 minutes ago. Ethan turned. And he's fine. Varant got pulled into a safe corridor 2 weeks ago. He couldn't message because of signal blackout. Dax looked at his mug. She's in the common room. She's been crying for about 10 minutes, which for Yara is basically a full breakdown. Ethan left the railing. Yara was in the far corner of the common room, in a chair pulled close to the wall, her pad face down on her knee. She was not crying anymore, but her eyes were red and she had the look of someone recently put back together, the seams still visible. She looked up when Ethan sat down across from her. "He's fine," she said. "I know, Dax told me." She nodded. She looked at her hands for a moment. She stopped. Started again. I had been so sure I was managing it, all of it. The briefings, the probe, the alert, all of it. Very managed. She glanced up at him. And then his name came through on the relay and "You're human," Ethan said. She looked at him. "We do that," he said. "We hold and hold and hold, and then one name comes through on a relay and everything releases at once." He paused. "It's not a flaw." "No," she said quietly. "It's not." They sat together as the common room moved around them. At the far end, someone had put music on, soft and low. A group of first-year cadets were playing a card game with intense concentration, the focus of people who needed their hands and eyes occupied. Two Solari instructors stood by the window and spoke in their quiet language to each other. Everywhere, people were spending the last hours of the calm in the way that felt right to them. At 0400, Ethan finally went to bed. At 0600, the assessment began. He sat down at the testing station, looked at the first question, and thought about a wrong stance that should not work. He thought about waiting 8 minutes while everyone else ran at the same target. He thought about 2 patrol vessels, and a mapping probe, and a burn mark on the outer hull, and a ship with no lights and no name, moving through the dark towards something that had been patient and deliberate, and had looked at them carefully and learned exactly the wrong thing. He thought about Velka's word, the hunter showing itself, the moment of assessment. Humanity's answer was already in the dark, already moving. He picked up his stylus and began. Outside, Kale Station turned in the silence between 3 systems. The stars held their positions. The outer boundary sat at the edge of the mapped world, where the charts ran out and the dark went on without names. The calm was over. Something was coming through it, and it was theirs.